Hello, my friends. How are you doing? God bless you. I'm continuing my lecture. I call it a lecture because actually it's a lecture. But my teaching on conflict management and resolution. And in my first video, I defined conflict as a social interaction between two parties, two people, party A and party B, where party A perceives that party B has done something, has said or done something, or is saying or doing something, or is about to say or do something that is against party B's interest. So I said that when party A perceives that, whether or not party B really did it or whatever, the moment party A perceives that party B is about to do something that's against their interest, then a conflict exists. But before I continue, my last video, I was talking about my experience in marriage and marriage conflict, conjugal conflict resolution, and I made a slip of tongue, and I said that my marriage was I was 26 years, 27 years of marriage. No, 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 no. I mean my 38th year of marriage now. So sometimes when you're old, some of these things are to be expected. Okay, I'm getting older, and my speech, my memory, everything. Sometimes I look at myself and say, "Is that me? Is that Mark?" Okay, never mind. We're growing, but there's so much here that I have to give up. So okay, tolerate me. Okay. Um. So conflict is the interaction between two parties, where one party perceives that the other party is about to do something or has done something that goes against their interest. And I talk about interest and perception, right? First of all, for a conflict to exist, there must be an interest. One party, both parties must have a common interest. And I said that interest can be, that interest is a thing of value, something of value. And something of value can be anything. It can be money, it can be some wealth, some material thing. It can also be something like, non-tangible values like, love, like respect, like honor, all these things are interests that people have that can cause conflict. If somebody is acting against that interest, then there can be conflict. All right. So I explained that conflict has to do with two main words. One, interest, and two, perception. So there must be an interest that both parties are vying for. Both parties, maybe like another school of thought, another definition of conflict is that two parties vying for the same scarce resources. I mentioned in my first video, three people, uh, you know, all vying for two mangoes. There are just two mangoes, and three people want the two mangoes. There's going to be a conflict. Or there are three mangoes, and that three people must share, but one mango is bad. There's going to be a conflict. All right. All right. So when one party perceives that the other party has put up a conflict behavior, then a conflict exists. Now, what I'm saying is that if party A realizes that party B is acting in such a way as to affect party A's interest, whether party B knows what party A is thinking or not, whether party A shows any signs so that party B will know what is going on in their mind or not, the conflict exists. Once there's perception in one person, there's a conflict, then there is a conflict. And we call that the intrapersonal conflict. The conflict at this stage, that's the first level of conflict. It's covert, it's hidden. The conflict is inside one person. The second party has not yet noticed anything to see that this person has something against me. And that's the level that Christ says that we must tackle the conflict. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 23 and 24, and then in Acts chapter 11, you know, uh, verse, verse 25 and 26, Jesus Christ talks about, you know, if you are going to the altar and you remember in your mind that somebody has something against you, there's conflict. If you don't resolve it, you are living in conflict, and living in conflict is living in sin. That's why Christ says that your offering is not acceptable. Your worship is not acceptable. Your praise is not acceptable. Your tithes is not, are not acceptable. Your offering, whatever you offer to God, is not acceptable. Go and resolve that conflict with that person, and then come back to give whatever you want to give to God. I'm so conscious about this that when there's a conflict between myself and my wife, I can't even pray because I know the will of God on this. And unless I resolve the conflict, I go and we sit down and talk. I can't pray. I can be on my knees for 1 hour and nothing will come out of my mouth because I know that my prayer doesn't go anywhere. Your prayer doesn't even go beyond the ceiling if you are living in conflict. Your prayer doesn't go beyond the ceiling, no matter who you are. Christ says that when you're bringing your offering, and when he talks about offering, it's not just money. Anything that you are going to offer to God, when you're bringing this and you remember that somebody has something against you, go and resolve that thing with that person before you come back and pray or fast or tithe or anything. All right. So I that's what I did in my first video. Today I'm going to talk about the function of conflict in society. That is to say, how we look at conflict. You see, whether or not you'll be able to solve conflict depends on how you see conflict. Whether or not you succeed in solving conflict in your marriage, in your church, in your workspace, in your family, whether or not you succeed in solving conflict will depend on your view of conflict. Now, conflict theorists have come out with 4 major views of conflict. Okay, now there may be more than that, but I'm just going to treat 4 views of conflict. The first view is the functionalist view or the traditionalist view. The traditionalist view of conflict is that conflict is harmful and must be avoided. This is the view adopted by many pastors, many churches, many denominations. And many people in general think that conflict is harmful. You see, when we look at the effect of conflict in the world, when we look at the conflicts of today, the conflict in Gaza, we see what is going on. Women and children being driven from their homes and they are dying in the thousands. The war in Ukraine, people living peacefully, happily in the family. Daddy having a good job, a good business, and mommy, they're all doing well. The children are in school, they're happy. And suddenly, they will have to run away from home, run away from their businesses, run away from their home, the beautiful, luxurious homes in which they live. They will have to run because there's war. So we see all these things happening all over Africa, in Yemen, in the Republic of Congo, in South Sudan, you know, all over the world. When we see the suffering and the destruction of property, then would just conclude like um, the the uh, the traditionalists will just conclude with the traditional that conflict is harmful, must be avoided at all costs. Now, if you have this view, you will never be able to solve conflict. You have 2 children and 2 children are fighting at home. Your view is that conflict is harmful. It must be avoided. So stop fighting. Come on, stop. You're not even interested to find out what is going on. Maybe some people will call them, what's going on? They will tell you whatever. Some people are more reasonable. They want to find out the interest. I've said in my first video that there is no conflict without an interest. So if your two children are fighting, there's an interest, a common interest. There's something they are vying for. So in order to resolve the conflict, you would have to find out first that interest. And when you find out the interest, then you know what to do. Okay, they are vying for the same scarce resource. So what do I do? Do I provide for both people, or do we share equitably the scarce resources? Do we share it in such a way that everybody will be satisfied? That's when you find solution. But if you just say stop, 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 like in the church, we are Christians, please. The Bible says we shouldn't bear grudge, we shouldn't fight. So please stop fighting. We are Christians. Yes, you can say those things. You can pray with them, but that doesn't mean you solve the conflict. The absence of war doesn't mean there's peace. Sometimes you can get two people to come and sit together and talk to them and ask them to hug. They will hug each other, they will greet each other. That doesn't mean the conflict doesn't persist. Until you find out the interest and meet those interests, the conflict will not be resolved. Okay, so the functionalist view or the traditionalist view is that conflict is harmful and must be avoided. If you hold this view of conflict, you may never be able to resolve a conflict. You will not be able to have a good conflict management style or conflict handling style. You'll not handle conflict well, and you'll not be able to resolve conflict for there to be peace. Okay. The second view of conflict is that conflict is helpful. And that's a humanist view of conflict. Conflict is helpful. The position of this group is that conflict is human. It is a natural sequence of the coexistence of different human beings coming from different cultures. You see, once we come from different cultures, and when I talk about culture, I'm talking about the totality of the way of life of a people, the way we are brought up, the environment in which we are brought up, our socialization, our language, our food, our dressing, our you know, our arts and our arts and even sciences, you know, our inheritance, system, all those aspects are, put together is called, culture. So people come from different cultures, and they come to meet in a place, in a workplace, or in a church, or in a group, or just two people coming from different cultures meet, and they'll have to coexist. But they have different cultures. They understand things differently. For instance, the symbols, and gestures that we do may mean different things in different places. Here in the United States, when we say thumbs up, someone does something and you give them a thumb up means congratulations, great. In other cultures, like some cultures in Africa, thumb up means it's an insult. You are insulting the person's mother or father. And this can result in a very serious conflict. So supposing that somebody coming from a culture where thumb up is an insult, it comes to another culture, it meets with another person where in that person's culture, a thumb up is congratulations. And supposing that this guy wants to congratulate the other guy, the other guy does something that is recommendable, and he raises a thumb up. He doesn't speak, just raises a thumb up. The other guy can easily get offended. Are you insulting me? Right? That's when they need to communicate. You need to explain. Oh, in my culture, when you raise your thumb up, it means you've done great. You've done a great job. Good job. Congratulations. I remember, I think it was in 1987, um, 1980s, yeah, somewhere. No, no, no. This is not 87. Okay, in 207, I went to train in Singapore, in a Bible school in Singapore, and there was another Ghanaian student also who came. I received orientation before I went. You know, he didn't get to have that orientation because we're going to Singapore. This is Asia. The Asian culture is very different from the Ghanaian culture. So we got there, and you know, the way that we hug each other in Ghana or in the United States or Europe, you hug somebody and you rub their back, you know, it's just a natural way of saying that, okay, I'm pleased with you, a good morning, good afternoon, I'm happy to see you. In Singapore, it's different, particularly between the two sexes. You don't even give your hand to a woman unless she gives you a hand. You don't even greet her and greet you. And I don't know, that's a long time ago. I don't know if it's changed now. Okay. I'm talking about 87s, the 80s. 207, sorry. I went there on 87, but I went back in 207. Here I'm talking about 207, right? Where you don't even give a hand, shake the hand of a woman unless she gives you a hand. And to embrace, you have to be careful. You have to know the person very well. If it's a lady and a man, you're going to embrace that lady. She must be the first person to want to embrace you. And if you embrace her, don't rub her back. Because in Singapore, rubbing the back of a woman means I want to have sex with you. I want to go to bed with you. So this brother who didn't have this orientation got there, and every lady that he met in the church, of course, we were in the church, a big church, and then she greets everyone and rub the back. Very soon, the news began to spread that this guy, this brother, wanted to sleep with everybody in the church. This lady meets another and says, "This brother, he's mean. He wanted to go to bed with me." Then the other lady said, "Me too, the same thing." Within a short time, the brother was actually black, painted black. He was blacklisted as somebody who uh, was immoral. He didn't know until one brother called him and told him that here we don't do that. If you greet a lady embraces, hugs you, you know, don't rub the back. Rubbing the back of the lady means I want to go to bed with you. Now, just look at the difference. So here is an innocent person. He wasn't doing it with any malice in mind, but there was a conflict. The ladies in their minds were looking at this guy as an immoral person, but they didn't confront him. They didn't confront him. All right. So the humanist view of conflict is that conflict is helpful because you need to confront the person. You need to go and say, no, what you're doing, why did you do, why did you rub my back? You say, oh, yeah, I did it because I just want to say that I'm happy to meet you. So no, in my society, when you do that, it means I want to go to bed with you. Right? So it is helpful to confront. It's helpful to uh, challenge, right? So the humanist view is that conflict is helpful. It's uh, a human reaction, human interaction that we cannot avoid. It is helpful. All right. The third view of conflict is the interactionist view of conflict. The interactionist view is that conflict is inevitable. Yeah, conflict is inevitable. Conflict is not only a positive force in society, but it is absolutely necessary for a group to perform, to function well. What the um, what the interactionists are saying is that it's not just that conflict is you know um, is inevitable, or conflict is helpful. It is inevitable. It is a necessary. It's a necessary part of human interaction. Relationship and progress cannot be maintained without conflict. There must be protest. There must be resistance to avoid complacency. Someone is doing something against you and you keep accommodating. When we get to the conflict handling sides, I'll talk about the conflict handling side that is called accommodating. Yes, accommodating. You say, oh, it's nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. One day you explode. One day you will explode. You see, so it is important that you confront, and the confrontation is the conflict. I mean, the confrontation is that you actually bringing the conflict from an intrapersonal level to an interpersonal level. You are confronting the person. Why are you doing this? Why are you saying this? It is very necessary for the society to go on, for the church to go on, for the family to go on, for couples to live in peace. You have to confront. And when I talk about confrontation, I'm not talking about the violent confrontation or violent verbal confrontation or violent physical confrontation. I'm talking about meeting, talking. I'm talking about communication. Brother, why are you saying this? Why are you doing this against me? For all you know, what you're thinking is not what is in the person's mind. That is why it's important for you to find out, to communicate, ask the person, right? So the interactionist point of view is that conflict is inevitable for the society to go on, or else there'll be complacency. For instance, in a workplace, the people, the owners just give the laborers or the employers whatever they want, you know, and the employers never complain. Oh, let me just leave that for the next one. Now, let me give uh, this example. You are doing something and you think you are doing it your best. Someone thinks it's not the best. And the person is not telling you. You become complacent and you just keep doing it the same way. The person may be laughing at you in their mind, but you don't know. So that person might come and tell you that you are not doing it well. And then you say, okay, why do you say I'm not doing it well? The person might teach you a better way to do it. So you see, if the person never comes out and tells you that this is wrong, this is not the best, you be complacent. That's what the interactionist view says. It is necessary, absolutely necessary, that there should be conflict in society. And again, conflict doesn't just mean war or violent verbal exchange or violent physical exchange. No, I've said that conflict is perception. It begins from within. Okay. So the internationalist view of conflict is that conflict is inevitable. Now, the fourth group is the structuralist view. Structuralist view of conflict. The structuralist view of conflict is that conflict is indispensable. It's not just that it's helpful, not just that it's inevitable, but it is indispensable. You cannot do without conflict. The society cannot do its conflict. And this view was actually held by Karl Marx and Engels, who uh, developed their theory about the class struggle. between the bourgeois and the proletariat, or let me just say the owners and the managers or the laborers. Okay, so here we have the business owners and their employees. Let me just put it that way. Um, in this view, it is inevitable if production would go on, if the company will excel, if the church will excel, if the group will excel, conflict is inevitable. Why do we have unions? And why are the wealthy people fighting against unions? Here in the United States, recently, President Biden went to visit some unions when they were doing some inauguration. The Democratic Party is standing with unions. They back unions. But the GOP, on the contrary, because they are mostly the employers, they are the business owners, they don't like unions. The owner of the company doesn't like unions. The business owners don't like unions. What are unions? Unions are when the people in the individual workers who have no voice come together and they unite to have one voice. So they can say, we are going on strike. They can negotiate with the ownership. They can negotiate with the employers. They can negotiate their salaries and say, you have to increase our salaries because of A, B, C, and D. So without the unions, the employers give the people, the employees, whatever they want. And let us remember that in a capitalist society, they make capital, they make profit. Every business owner wants to make maximum profit without taking into consideration the workers' welfare. They give them just the minimum. And so people are working under drudgery. It's almost like slavery again. So the unions speak for the people. The unions have power. Now the unions can come and negotiate with the employers and say, look, these people who are part of the union, they are your workers, but they are part of the union. You have to raise their pay. You have to increase their salaries. Now, if the employer refuses, the union can call a strike. And we see that every day in every part of the world. So the individual workers who have no voice find their voice in the union. All right. So that is the structuralist view that was held by Karl Marx and Engels, where the class struggle, and to them, they are saying that the class struggle is important if production must go on, because if the people, the workers are not being given, they are not well paid, they are bearing grudge, they will not work, they will not give their best. Okay, they'll not give their best. So production will go down. You may fire some workers and bring in others. When they come at the beginning, they will work hard. But very soon, they will also realize that, no, you are cheating us. You are using us as beasts of burden. And then the production, whatever they are given, will go down. So your company will not prosper. Your company will not excel. It will just be a mediocre company. So the structuralist point of view is that conflict is inevitable, indispensable. You cannot do away with conflict, and that conflict is important, very important in the society. All right. That is why we have the unions. So in summary, there are four views. I'll come to the biblical point, biblical view of conflict. But the views that I've just mentioned is that, one, the traditionalist view is that conflict is harmful. The humanist view is that conflict is helpful. The interactionist view is that conflict is inevitable. The structuralist view is that conflict is indispensable. Now, let's look at the biblical view of conflict. Conflict in the Bible exists. Before Christ came, there were conflicts. Christ came into a conflict, physical conflict and spiritual conflict. Once there is the enemy, what Christ calls the enemy, the devil, who is the enemy for our souls, who opposes anything God does, there is a big conflict. There's a big war going on. So conflict is there. Now Christ came and he came to confrontation with Satan. When Christ says that I've seen Satan fall from heaven as lightning. When Christ cast out demons, when he rebuked demons and cast them out, he was confronting an opposing power. So the conflict is there. It's real, it's present and real in the Bible. But is conflict necessary? Now, let us read what Jesus Christ says in Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 and 35. Now, if you look at Christ, you look at he being the Prince of Peace. He actually coming to bring peace between humans and the Father. He coming to reconcile humans and the Father. It's paradoxical to think that Christ would say that conflict is necessary. Now, in Matthew chapter 10, I'm going to read verses 34 and 35. This is what Christ says. Don't think that I came to bring peace to the earth. I came to bring trouble, that's conflict, not peace. I came to turn sons against their fathers, daughters against their mothers, and daughters-in-law against their mothers-in-law. Your worst enemies will be in your own family. That's what Christ was saying. Don't think that I came to bring peace. He's the Prince of Peace. But he said, don't think I came to bring peace. But I came to bring conflict, war, conflict. So, is it not paradoxical that the Prince of Peace would say he came to bring conflict? I overheard some Muslim clerics, on some television in Ghana who were actually, who don't understand Christ, they don't understand the scriptures, just took things out of context and were complaining that, Christ, who is supposed to be the Prince of Peace, is saying that he came to bring conflict. Yes, Christ came to bring conflict. The conflict that he came to bring is essential. The biblical standpoint is that conflict is inevitable. Conflict is helpful. Conflict is, indispensable. For you to live a Christian life, you're going to have a lot of conflict. Look at the apostles. Everywhere they went to preach, there was conflict. The words that Jesus Christ came to teach are words that solicit conflict. They are, when you begin to speak the words of Jesus Christ, you begin to preach the gospel, you are putting up a conflict behavior. You are putting up a conflict behavior to the people that are listening who are not Christians. But when Christ says that when somebody, slaps you on one cheek, turn the other, definitely, how many people, how many cultures will accept that on earth? When Jesus Christ says, love your enemies, how many cultures will accept that on earth? All right. The Jewish society certainly could not accept that. How can we, the Jews, love Romans who are ruling over us and exacting taxes from us, who are oppressing us? How do you say that we should love Romans? Never. On the contrary, It's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. So Jesus Christ came and preached his message of peace, solicited, it brought conflict between him and the Pharisees. It was a necessary conflict because he was bringing ideas that were contrary to the interest of the Jewish society. The Jewish society had their personal interests, the Pharisees had personal interests, the scribes had their own interests, every human being has personal interests, but they also had a national interest. And the national interest was a Jewish dynasty, what we call it, you know, um, the tabernacle of David. David was the only king who actually built a Jewish dynasty, who built a kingdom, the whole kingdom. He was able to subdue most of the nations and built a vast dynasty. After him, Solomon came, he messed up, and then after Solomon, the dynasty collapsed. And no one has since then been able to build a Jewish dynasty. So the Jews actually, when they're looking for the Messiah, they're looking for a Messiah who come and rebuild the tabernacle of David. It means build the Jewish kingdom as David built it, that it will rule over all the world. They are expecting a Messiah that will come and defeat the Romans and establish a Jewish dynasty that will rule over all the world. So Christ coming and telling them to love their enemies, this message of peace brought conflict. That's what Christ is saying. Your message of peace will bring conflict. It will bring conflict to people whose interests will be affected by your message. Remember, conflict has to do with interest. It has to do with perception and interest. So what we are saying might be the most excellent thing, but it is affecting somebody's interest. Somebody who has self-interest sees you as an enemy. The Jews saw Christ as an enemy. They said, if we allow this guy to go on, the Romans will come and take our temple and our place and destroy the land. They will destroy. They will come and destroy everything that we have lived and hoped for. So they saw Christ as an enemy. So you see, even though he never insulted anybody, he never fought anyone, he always preached peace. His message of peace was against the personal and national interest of the Jewish society. That's why he says, don't think I came to bring peace, I came to bring conflict. And he said, in the same house, son will be against father, daughter will be against mother, daughter-in-law against mother-in-law. And that's what happened. That's what exactly happened in the church. The first 200 years of existence, people were betraying their parents. People gave up. Jews betrayed Jews to the Roman Empire for them to be crucified, for them to be burned alive. Children gave up their own parents, exactly as Christ said it. People betrayed their mothers-in-law. Parents gave up their children because their children, if your child converts into Christianity and you try to let him stop and he doesn't stop, to you, Christianity is against your interest, the father's interest. No, I'm a Jew. For me, I need a Jewish Messiah. I need a Jewish dynasty. This guy, what is preaching, cannot give me that. So the father can easily betray his son. And that's what happened for the first 200 years. Fathers were betraying their children. Children were betraying their parents. Daughters-in-law were betraying their mothers-in-law, and so on and so forth. But Jesus Christ, what he says is the absolute truth. He came to bring reconciliation between man and God, but that message of reconciliation will bring conflict because there are some people who are not interested in reconciliation. Again, I've talked about interest. You cannot solve a conflict without finding out the interest. Even in war, there are some people who are interested, the people who manufacture weapons, the end, the National Rifle Association, NRA. Why are they, lobbying people in Parliament, in the Senate, in the House, not to pass gun laws in the United States? Because they have an interest. They are manufacturing guns, and it's the sales of guns that brings them their wealth. So such a person will never agree that we should make laws to limit the manufacture of certain weapons because they have a personal interest. So when there's war, what happens? There's war in Africa. They push those guns. They push those weapons. And the wars all over the world, that's where they sell. That's why they make their sales. Do you think that these same people who are making profit out of the war will be interested in any solution, any resolution of the conflict? No. So the person bringing peace, you become an enemy. The person who wants to bring reconciliation, you become an enemy to those people who have an interest in the war. In conflict, people eat. In conflict, people sleep. So the people providing certain amenities during certain conflicts, they sell more. They sell guns, they sell certain other things, they sell more. And those who are benefiting from the conflict would not want the conflict to end. They want the conflict to persist, to endure. So that's the wisdom and the Lord saying that I didn't come to bring peace, I came to bring conflict. But then he didn't end there. He goes and tells us that the conflict will come. They'll persecute you. They'll kill you. He told them in Matthew chapter 10, actually, it will come to a time that anyone who kills you will think that they are doing a favor to Yahuwah. Yeah, and it happened exactly. But Jesus Christ tells his own people, his own disciples, in Matthew chapter 5, as I said, Matthew chapter 5, verse 23 to 26. If you are bringing your gift to the altar, and you remember that somebody has something against you, God says he doesn't need your offering. He doesn't need your prayer. He doesn't need your worship. Go back, take a telephone, go to the person's house, sit down and reconcile. That's Jesus Christ's way of resolving conflict. The conflict must be resolved at the first level, the intra-personal level, at the level of perception. You know in your mind. The person might not even know, but once you know it, go and resolve it. That's Christ. So in Matthew chapter 5, verse 23, 26, he says that if you remember in your head that someone has something against you. So here is somebody who has something against you. The person thinks you are working towards, you are working against their interest. Go and resolve it. Now, when you come to Mark 11, 25 and 26, there Christ is, when you stand praying and you have something against somebody. So now it is you that have something against that person. That person may not even know that you have something against them. Christ says, resolve it, forgive them, let go, kill that conflict, kill that intrapersonal conflict. And then in Matthew chapter 18, verse 15 to 20, Christ offers arbitration, how to resolve conflict. Why? Because he knows that conflict is inevitable. Conflict is indispensable. He came to bring conflict between evil and good. Evil will always be in conflict with good. It's perpetual until Christ comes and ends all evil, until the father of all evil is arrested and thrown into the bottomless pit. Evil will continue. As long as there are evil forces, Satan and his demons and his spirits and the fallen angels who are working for him, and the human accomplices working against every good, being greedy, being selfish, thinking about their own, only their welfare, there's going to be conflict. But Christ offers, he tells his disciples that you can't live in conflict. If you are living in conflict, you are living in sin. If you are living in sin, your prayer doesn't go anywhere. The Bible says in Isaiah 59, God's hand is not shortened, neither is his ear deaf to hear you. It's your sins that have barricaded, have made a barrier between you and God that he cannot hear you. Living in conflict is living in sin. Resolve the conflict immediately. At what level? At the intrapersonal level, while the conflict is still within you, while the conflict is still within your heart. You know that you have something against that person. That person may not even know that you have something against them. Once you perceive that, there's something going on and you have something against them, what Christ is saying is that go and resolve that conflict before you come and offer him anything. So the biblical point of view of conflict is that conflict is necessary. First of all, conflict is real, conflict is present, conflict is necessary, conflict is helpful, conflict is inevitable, conflict is indispensable. All those, except the traditionalist view that conflict is, of course, conflict is harmful. A certain level of conflict is harmful. Not all levels of conflict are harmful. When you don't treat conflict at the level at which it's supposed to be managed, and it goes to the next level, I'll treat the different levels of conflict. Okay, it goes to the next level, you don't treat it, it goes to the next level, it becomes harmful. So all the views are important, but you see, there's a level at which conflict becomes harmful. Conflict is helpful up to a certain point, but from a certain point onwards, conflict becomes harmful. So today I've treated the different views, the different, views of the role of conflict in society. In my next video, God willing, I'll treat the different levels of conflict so that you know when there's a conflict, you know at what level you are and how to deal with that conflict. After that, I'll treat conflict handling styles so that you know how to deal with the conflict at every level. All right. So today, I've come your way with the view of conflict in society. How do you view conflict? Maybe today you're going to change your mind. If in your mind conflict is absolutely harmful and I don't want to go there, I don't even want to mention, I don't want to confront the person, I don't want to say anything, I'll just keep swallowing. You will swallow up to a certain point. It's like when you cock, some gas in a bottle and the pressure is big, it will explode. There are some people who are afraid to come out. They are afraid to confront. They are afraid to say what they are sensing, what they are perceiving. Maybe a woman is afraid to tell the husband that you are hurting me. The husband is stepping on your toes all the time, and you are afraid. You are harboring it. You are tolerating, accommodating. A day will come when you explode. Nothing at all. But the least thing you explode, and your husband says, "What's going on? This little thing that I said you exploded." No, it accumulated over a long period. That person didn't take the time to treat it. I gave an example previously concerning the Ghanaian pastor in Florida, who took a pistol, went to the wife's job place, and shot her several times. At the end, he said, "It's Satan, it's Satan." Oh, of course it's Satan. But the conflict was never resolved at home. You have to resolve the conflict at the level of perception. Obey Christ. When you're coming to pray, you're coming to worship, you're going to give an offering, you're going to give your tithes, and you remember that somebody has something against you. He says he doesn't need your interest. He doesn't need whatever you are offering. Go and resolve that conflict. Call that person. Go to that person. "I'm sorry." Or, "Is there something wrong? I've seen that your behavior has changed towards me. Your mood has changed. Is there something wrong? Have I done anything wrong? Tell me. I'll beg you." We must be people of peace. The Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. Peacemakers. We must be peacemakers. God bless you. Don't miss the next video. As I've told you, subscribe to this channel and never miss any of this series. Very important. Conflict in marriage, conflict in church, conflict in the family, conflict at the workplace. Wherever there is conflict. Conflict is inevitable, and you need to understand and know how to resolve conflict. God bless you. I'll see you again in my next video. Ciao.